You can pay.
Okay.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We wait for more people to join. We just have the ways to engage listed. So we are recording this session. We assume consent unless you tell us otherwise. Please keep your microphones muted at all times. The camera is optional, but it's welcome. For the Q&A, please use the raise hand feature, or you can use the chat. And please use the chat to introduce yourself, drop some questions, discussion points. If you see a question that you think you can answer or want to add more to, please feel free to do that. So our webinar today is titled From Problematic to Circular Packaging, and we will be discussing best practices for addressing problematic and unnecessary plastics. So this webinar is being hosted by Plastic Reboot South Africa, which aims to provide circular solutions to plastic pollution in South Africa. Specifically, the vision is to contribute to an equitable and inclusive circular economy for plastic packaging in the food and beverage sector. Our objective is to reduce the volumes of plastic waste generated and leaked into the environment through the implementation of circular strategic interventions upstream and midstream. So the project is funded by the Global Environmental Facility. The implementing agent is UNIDO. In South Africa, the executing agent is World Wildlife Fund South Africa, and the national project partners include Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and GreenCape, which is where I'm from and where the team that you see here is working from. The project duration is 5 years. There's 4 components to the Plastic Reboot. So first one is about regulatory and policy environment, led by WWF. Then comes the finance portion, also led by WWF. And then GreenCape is leading component 3, private sector engagement, which I will go into in a minute. And then there's component 4, knowledge and capacity building and reporting. So the South African Plastics Pact is part of this Plastic Reboot project. So if you don't know, the SA Plastics Pact is a collaborative platform that drives innovation, dialogue, and collaborative action to create a circular economy for plastic packaging in South Africa. It's facilitated by GreenCape, so us as the Secretariat, and the pact brings together organizations from across the packaging value chain and made up of founding business and supporting members. Together, we have committed to 4 ambitious targets. So these have been published on the various online publications. We officially launched them last week with the presence of the minister. So if you'd like to know more, please feel free to look those up. And then the members work together in a pre-competitive environment, and they typically use action groups to work towards the implementation of interventions. Our annual impact report is available, and you'll be able to click the link after we share the slides. So why did I talk about Plastics Pact? Well, Plastic Reboot and Plastics Pact are linked. So typically, Plastics Pact members are the innovators and early adopters. So Reboot is being delivered in synergy with SA Plastics Pact by GreenCape, and we're working towards achieving the 2030 targets while also extending beyond the pact value chain into the broader industry to catalyze change at scale. So why problematic and unnecessary? So problematic plastics, they're not reusable, they're not recyclable. This could be technically or recyclable at scale, or they're not compostable. Their manufacturing requires hazardous chemicals that pose a risk to human health and the environment. They hinder or disrupt the recyclability and compostability of either items, and they have a high likelihood of being littered and ending up in the natural environment. This is different from unnecessary plastics, which have limited social utility, for which no alternative is required and can be phased out without significant change. So problematic and unnecessary plastics vary among the regions according to the capability of the regions. But in this case, you will see the SA approach and the UK approach. As part of the work for Plastic Reboot, we have a publication on problematic unnecessary plastics focusing on shrink sleeves, discussing the challenges and barriers faced by plastic pack members when implementing the change from PET to polyolefin shrink sleeves. So feel free to scan the QR code or click for these case studies. So the agenda today, I'm doing the welcome very quickly. Then we have Don McFarlane from Woolworths speaking about the alternative to PVC, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. Then we'll have the UK plastics pack perspective on how they addressed problematic and unnecessary plastics by Jonathan Moore, followed by another Q&A, and then we'll have the closing from Rowan Snyman, the SA Plastics Pack Project Manager. So there's a nice photos of program speakers. Now I'd like to welcome Don McFarlane, and as the presentation loads, I'll just introduce him. So Don has a background in packaging manufacturing, where he held the position of Divisional Technical Manager for Amcor Flexible. Over 40 years in the packaging industry, Don has held positions covering technical sustainability, new product development for FMCG, and medical and pharmaceutical sectors. Currently, Don is a packaging senior at WWF South Africa and is responsible for the technical sustainability, R&D, and compliance aspects of the food division. Don, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I trust you all can hear me this morning. I'm going to talk to you about probably one of the more, I don't want to say difficult, but one of the more challenging packaging materials to eliminate and to shift from. And a lot of that challenges and difficulty element stems from the fact that PVC has been embedded into the food packaging industry for more than 50 years. And I'm just going to say to you to move to the next slide, please. And this is the fact that we've identified, like SA Plastics Pack has identified PVC as a problematic packaging, fell within the framework of our strategy for 2030 and beyond. And our strategy, just quickly, contains 4 pillars around circularity, ensuring that all our packaging is recyclable and that we use as much post-consumer recycled packaging into making new packaging. So we need PCR, we need to use maximum amounts of PET. We have that same culture and thinking around paperboard, etc., etc. And so already you can see when I talk about circularity and recyclability, the red flag goes up for PVC and specifically cling film. And I'm talking about cling film today because PVC bottles and PVC thermoformed sheet-fed packaging formats, Woolworths has eliminated in excess of 15 years ago already. And then our second pillar is innovation, and it talks about the identifying those problematic plastics and then finding solutions through collaboration, etc. And here again, this pillar of ours speaks to the need to address and innovate around PVC. Climate change, we are carbon conscious about the packaging that we use. We're aware of the carbon impact and the impact that our packaging has on the environment is our third pillar. And our final pillar is packaging with purpose, where we take a look at the employee health and safety inside packaging manufacturing companies. What is people that work in a packaging manufacturer subjected to? What are people that interact with packaging when they're using packaging to pack products? What are they subjected to? And this we call our packaging with purpose. It's taking responsibility to ensure that we leave nobody behind and that nobody is harmed in the process of the manufacture of our packaging. Don't know if any of you have ever been inside a chicken portion hand packing operation where they hot wire cut PVC and the type of volatile organic compounds that emit from cutting PVC cling film with a hot wire and the kind of environment that these people have to stand and work in. So that speaks to our fourth pillar. And it really spoke to many of our packaging formats that we identified as problematic, as well as those that were just not recyclable. Next slide, please. And if we target and specifically talk about PVC, polyvinyl chloride, our starting point was to ensure we understood PVC end to end. That's the last item on the slide that you see. To fully understand what PVC was all about. We recognized its high versatility, the ability to be in every arena, in every food type, inside meat packing halls, inside packing halls for fruit and veg, chicken. It was an absolute versatile plastic packaging. And like I said, in the second last item, a stalwart of the food industry in excess of 50 years. And that is key. And that is one of the biggest challenges with PVC, the fact that it is a stalwart in the food industry. We recognize its broad operating window. It had a broad tolerance. It was easy and was user-friendly, largely developed over the years, having been in the industry in excess of 40 years, 50 years. It's fit for purpose and functional. It's been developed over time to meet all the needs that the industry, the food packing industry, threw at it. It admittedly had excellent cling, elasticity, and good mechanical properties. It was fairly strong. Next slide, please. So it's with that background and understanding PVC intimately that we now faced the challenge a number of years ago to finding an alternative. We recognized right up front that it wasn't going to be a plug and play solution. We couldn't literally take a PVC roll off the line, replace it with a polyolefin PE type cling film, and press the green button to start and run on especially on those automatic lines that we were using. It had a narrower operating window. The tolerances were not unreasonable or insurmountable, but it's admittedly narrower than PVC. We went through a period of trials, pilot order, and then full commercial, not just doing a little trial for an hour and then going into full commercial. We went trial, pilot order, and then full commercial. There were some tweaks and adaptations that we needed to do to the film, as well as some of the semi-automatic and fully automatic lines that we operated in. The hand wrapping, which is still common in South Africa, was less challenging. But I want to talk about that adaptation for a brief moment and to say to you that the adaptations that we needed to do was a lot of the mindset and the thinking of people not understanding polyolefins. Therefore, right, the final one in red, I say, understand polyolefins, understand what we're dealing with. And here we, when we finally settled on Supertheme, it was the ninth different company, and all the other eight companies before were from overseas, as far afield as India and Germany. And one of the things that probably got it over the line with Supertheme and our journey with them was the fact that they were in South Africa and were able to support the film. That is imperative. That collaboration that I talk about there, it's the collaboration between the food packer, the machine manufacturer of the semi or fully automatic wrapping line. It's the collaboration of the film manufacturer, the brand owner, which is ourselves, and we all, and We all had to get together and rally around this. And the collaboration is imperative. You cannot drop a roll off at a manufacturer, take out something that they've been using for 50 years and expect them to make it work. And once we got that trial and pilot phase going, and we had it approved, we went through a phase of approval and removal, that breaking free. We immediately removed all PVC from packing halls. There was never that opportunity for an operator at 2 o'clock in the evening who had a little bit of challenge with a polyolefin that he wasn't prepared to overcome, and he simply takes the polyolefin roll off and goes back to PVC. It was an approval, removal, and a breaking free of PVC process that we went through. Next slide, please. And not everything that we could, that we were packing in PVC was replaced with PVC. We had direct PVC replacements, and I've got 3 products here that shows a lot of it centered around our produce and our packing halls in the fruit and vegetable areas of our business. Some of it, PVC's got a step sister or step brother that it moves around, never moves around on its own. It's always got somebody with it. And unfortunately, that somebody that it trucks with is expanded polystyrene. We also, as always, identify it as a problematic packaging. It's collected and recycled in South Africa, and there are markets that require post-consumer recycled styrene. But in the food industry, the level of collection and recyclability is very low. Single-digit numbers that we're talking about. So we identified it. When we do our beach cleanups and we get the results of beach cleanups, polystyrene is always right up there. Identified as problematic, goes hand in hand with PVC shrink, and at the same time we wanted to eliminate it. So the second column is where we started eliminating and replacing PVC. We went over to PE shrink films, replaced our expanded polystyrene trays for our avos, and we made it into board and then put a PE shrink film around it. The same with our pizzas and lemons and many other varieties of products on shelf. We also completely eliminated PVC in the third column, where we were admittedly under pressure from consumers to take out plastic, and we started shifting to paperboard, and we've done it in a number of areas of our business. You'll see things like our organic pastas, our sandwiches, fruits and veg, and many more that are now previously plastic, now packed in paperboard. In our chicken, we initially migrated from a foam styrene tray with PVC into a foam styrene tray with polyolefin or PE clean film, and later on we eliminated the expanded polystyrene and put it into PET, which is more recyclable in South Africa, with a recyclable lidding film. And a lot of our steaks that are marinated traditionally used to be packed in a foam tray, and the marinated steak with the bag inside the foam tray and then wrapped in PVC. We eliminated all that and we sell it like that now. Away with the PVC and away with the foam tray. So it wasn't a wherever we use PVC, we will introduce the polyolefin PE shrink film. It wasn't that case because, like I say, PVC is never on its own as a cling film. It always goes hand in hand in 90% of the time with expanded polystyrene. Next slide, please. And ultimately, when we print on the back of our packs, we talk about our farming, the methodology that we use, our farming for the future principles of how we ensure that farmers get the maximum crop yield, that we use the maximum of product and produce that comes from those environments, that we can communicate through the OPRL. And what a pleasure it is to see a carton box with a wrap that's now carries the number 4 material identification code that can be labeled recyclable. And we also choose on our back of packs to say things like the breathable plastic used to wrap this box helps maintain the quality of our citrus and prevent food waste. So we encompass everything. It's a massive collaboration and the thing that you've got to stay the journey with when you replace PVC from. But here's the big thing. The replacement and the introduction of superthene over PVC has not been and hasn't seen any commercial impact. In many instances where our producers were using large volumes of PVC and they bought the same volumes of PE cling film, there was a cost saving for them. So this whole journey of eliminating problematic plastics, and we work off that SA Plastics Pact list, the journey of ensuring that we introduce it successfully through the trial, pilot, and then commercial phase, and eliminating PVC from the premises of that packing hall is key to success. The collaboration with everybody, the identifying and understanding of PVC in the first place, and then the education at our packing houses with regard to how polyolefins work, how they differ, and why we wanted to do polyolefin as opposed to PVC is critical. It is important that you hold your packer's hand throughout the phase, and we identify it on a product by product basis. Just because it works in this area doesn't mean it works in that area. It's a lot of work, but not insurmountable. We've done it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Don. That was very interesting to hear the journey that Woolworths went through in terms of breaking free from PVC. I think you're right that you take systems perspective and really think of the different impacts that substitution or eliminating a certain plastic will be. So it's not straightforward. Sometimes you have to look for other solutions, as well as the fact that you also considered the end of life of the plastic that you are using. It's so very important. I'd like to ask if there's any questions. You can raise your hand or put it in the chat.
I want to also say in the spirit of collaboration, if there's any other brand owner or retailer out there that wants some finer, more detailed technical information and how we overcome specific areas, we are more than welcome to share that with you. So you can reach out. I know a lot of you reach out directly to me. It always makes me uncomfortable when a competitor reaches out directly to me. So I would ask you, reach out to SA Plastics Pack as a neutral, and they can in turn then chat to me about it. But we're more than welcome to share with you.
Thank you. Kirsten, you had your hand up?
Thank you. I see my mic is on. Thank you, Don. Inspiring as usual, and great to hear, the invite for ongoing collaborations. And just wondering, when we've been engaging in the industry, there's been quite a lot of talk around the lack of functionality around the polyolefin replacements. But love the idea of the collaboration that was formed between all the parties. What do you think was the sort of big win in terms of overcoming some of those functionality questions around? I think it was sort of the degree of stickiness or cling was one of the options there.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we said we get to understand and we know PVC intimately. We know its strengths, like its stickiness and its ability to tack and stretch. We understand that. And we see how that impacts the product. So in our instance, we needed to, in some instances, retrofit a semi-automatic or fully automatic line to accommodate that. In some instances, we needed some little additional heater plates. And after you wrap it around where PVC would just naturally cling, we needed to apply a little bit of heat to the polyolefin just to hold it there. And in our case, we don't do like many other retailers or brand owners would do. They do a lot of in-store packing and wrapping. We do the bulk of our stuff outside of the stores at our food suppliers, and it gets transported. So initially, we also experienced the wrapping coming apart and compromising the product. Through the trial and pilot phases, we found that out. And specifically through the trial and pilot phases that we find that out, and not in full production, because we find that a lot of the noise and the anger towards the shift away from PVC is when people go from trial directly into commercial, and the play out and the fallout of finding these functional challenges happens when you're starting to supply bulk. So go through that trial and pilot and then commercial. There are retrofits. Super Thin has been great. A lot of the stuff that they did is through their understanding of their own film and what they've gained from different companies. They are not insurmountable. There are areas where they don't. And like I say, in those areas that we couldn't find a solution, we simply changed and altered the pack completely to a shrink polyethylene and sent it through a heat tunnel, as opposed to trying to make the polyolefin, which is a different film, to make it work. But we were clear in the knowledge that we wanted to eliminate PVC. So you're right, there are challenges around it, but they're not insurmountable, and most of it we've overcome.
Thank you, Don, and thank you for being so open about the challenges that you faced and the fact that you surmounted them. I'm sure it's very inspirational for people on the line. And I think, Kirsten, that was a very good question. We've got a few minutes left. So is there another question, or can I jump in? Yes, Bevan. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, sure, I did. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Don. How's it going? Good.
I'm warning yourself, Bev.
Good, man. I just want to confirm something. So this is holistic. It's 100% of whatever or wherever there was PVC. Woolies has now eliminated that entirely.
Wherever there was PVC, there was a high percentage of it that we converted across to polyolefin clean film. In the areas that we couldn't,
Okay.
we would have then changed the pack format. One of our areas was our 4-pack apples. We've got about 8 different apple varieties, and we took and seized the opportunity because apples were being packed in up to 6 or 7 different pack houses, and they all had different types of packing. Some of them were hand, some of them semi-automatic, some of them fully automatic. And because of that scenario, with the same SKU, the same ordinary red apple being packed in 6, we needed to find a better solution, because we couldn't go to market with from pack house number 3, 4, and 5 in polyolefin, but pack house 1, 2, and 3 who battled with polyolefin in PVC or in something different. So we changed it completely, and we decided to make our 4 apples into a carton sleeve.
Okay.
So those are the things where we couldn't, and we were facing challenges. We didn't say, okay, because we faced a challenge, we're still going to keep PVC. We said, well, if we can't replace it with polyolefin, what are we going to do then? What is the next thing? And that's when we started altering the pack formats and bringing in other ideas.
Nice. Brilliant. Just a final thing, the conversion of the chicken pack, that lidding film, what material is that?
Hey, Bevan, you work for that other retailer. Okay. So that's a pure PET lidding form.
PET. Okay, got it. Cool.
Pure PET lidding form on
Sure.
a non-laminated PET tray. It is common for PET trays to be laminated with polyethylene, so you could put a polyethylene-based lidding film onto it, and they would adhere. But now, when the recyclers don't like laminated PET trays anymore, so we eliminated the laminated PET trays completely, and it was very common in the meat and chicken area. So all those trays are pure PET now. Because it's pure PET, we needed to find an alternative solution for that.
Okay. Brilliant. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Bevan. Thanks so much, Don, for joining us. Please stay for the rest of the webinar. Would like to move on to the next speaker now. Our next speaker is Jonathan Moore, who will be giving us the UK Plastics Pact perspective on addressing problematic and necessary packaging. So Jonathan Moore is a chemistry graduate from the University of Birmingham with over 20 years of experience in the plastic packaging industry in both quality and technical roles. Jonathan is a specialist for the UK Packaging Pact at WRAP, where he provides technical support and advice to the membership and global initiatives on all aspects of packaging, including elimination, design, recycling, and end markets. He's the technical lead for Goal 1, which is related to optimizing packaging of the UK Packaging Pact, developing strategies and bringing industry together to solve the key challenges to drive the optimization of packaging. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us. I'll give the floor over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for that introduction. I'll just give you a brief overview of sort of WRAP and who we are and where we've come from on the UK Plastics Pact before diving into the problematic and unnecessary topic. For over 20 years, WRAP has delivered programmes that reduce CO2 and waste, restore nature and change people's behaviour. Our origins and a significant amount of our work are in the UK, but we have active projects all around the world, from South Africa to Mexico, from Indonesia to the USA, with offices in London, Washington, DC, Adelaide and Brussels. We have the footprint and the contacts around the world to deliver on a global scale, and we currently have about 200 employees based on 3 different continents with over 40 active projects around the world. Looking at the UK Plastics Pact, we have data now covering up to 2024, through which we've seen real progress, but the journey for us isn't complete. We know that it's going to take more time to hit 2 of the original targets, largely owing to a delay in policy implementation focused around the collection of flexible materials, and there are still some stubborn design challenges that we're struggling to overcome. With the UK Plastics Pact journey now complete, but the job not completed, in consultation with our members, we've launched the UK Packaging Pact as the successor agreement, expanding to cover all materials used in the manufacture of packaging to increase our influence and also minimise those unintended consequences which can happen when packaging formats are switched. I'll now take you through the UK Plastics Pact approach to problematic and unnecessary plastics. When we launched the UK Plastics Pact and look at the elements needed to drive the circular economy, it was clear that taking out what was not needed and removing those materials and additives that contaminated was the clear first step. In collaboration with our members, we had to determine what makes plastic items or packaging problematic or unnecessary, and we developed a set of criteria by which we could assess items or materials. Having then agreed the approach, we then had a framework by which we could classify items and materials as problematic. It is avoidable, not collected, not recycled, hampers the process, or is subject to loss and littering. We were then able to identify solutions, whether that be removing them, redesigning or improving labelling or communications to citizens. A USP of WRAP is that we can convene and facilitate discussions in a pre-competitive space, particularly important when we talk about removal. And we were able to consult much more widely than the PAC network. We took inputs from the recycling industry, gathered data on items littered and involved government. From this, we developed the initial framework, focusing on 8 items and materials that met the above criteria. And we then set out a timescale for their removal. For the more challenging materials, we set up sprint groups to identify and share recyclable alternatives and their wider adoption. The initial list focused on single-use items such as cutlery, tableware, straws, cotton buds and stirrers. And with the support of legislation, we've seen a near total removal of these items. We targeted oxidogradable additives that cause rapid fragmentation of plastics and again managed a total removal. When assessing the use of materials for packaging for the UK market, it was apparent that polystyrene and PVC weren't used in large enough volumes to make commercial recovery viable. That, coupled with the contaminating nature of PVC to the PET waste stream, was why we proposed these materials for elimination. We have had significant success with the elimination of these materials, but still have a way to go, with challenges such as use in pharmaceuticals, legacy products, and a multi-country supply from single-country machines, such as PS, where a product is made in polystyrene in a country that recycles it, but exported to a country that doesn't. The list was extended in 2022 to include 6 additional items, with progress being tracked from that point forward. These items are more challenging to remove due to the convenience and technical functionality. For example, plastic wrapping for multi-packs are convenient not only for shoppers but also for store staff who can stock shelves quicker. However, removing the multi-pack wrapper whilst maintaining the same price per unit removes unnecessary plastic and enables people to buy what they need. This is particularly true for fresh fruit and vegetables, which are highly wasted in the home. Removing the packaging helps people buy what they need, reduce cost, and ensure that food does not go to waste. It is therefore important that for shoppers to understand why these changes are being made and to choose to avoid unnecessary plastic packaging and ensure that retailers continue to provide and increase their loose offering. Driving up the circularity of plastic packaging requires it to be designed for recycling and widely collected and recycled in practice and at scale. And now is the time to ensure all plastic packaging on the market is designed for optimal recyclability. This will not only reduce the processing costs, but also improve the quality of recycling. The elimination list has therefore been strengthened with a renewed focus on materials which will still not be recycled once collected, or which reduce the quality of recycling. Following an evidence review and consultation with members, 8 new items have been added to the elimination list, with phased removal as far as possible. By the end of 2025, where solutions already exist and members are already taking steps to redesign the packaging, this is to ensure that wider industry follows suit and moves to recyclable packaging. And by the end of 2027, for more challenging applications where additional time is needed for test, trials and rollout to the wider market. But that's not the complete story for us. There are many other plastic packaging items that are considered problematic or unnecessary, which are outlined in this investigation list, but a full market consensus on removal has not been reached. For each of these items, PAC members will assess whether the following actions can justify continuing use. Can its use be avoided in the context within which it is being used? Can it be replaced with reusable or alternative options? Can the design be improved to increase recyclability? Can investment be made in labelling, messaging and collections and recycling infrastructure to boost retrieval and recycling? If the reasons why an item is considered problematic or necessary cannot be overcome, or if the benefits of its use outweigh the impact, members may decide not to replace it. It is the responsibility of all PAC members to undertake the actions that work for their businesses and supported by RAP. A considered approach is critical to ensure there are no consequences which outweigh the impact of the packaging. With all items on the list, if replacement with alternative materials is considered carefully, care should be taken not to negatively impact the environment or to increase food or product waste. For us, collaboration is the key to solving challenges, bringing together evidence, insights and data to understand the scale of the problem and finding and sharing solutions. You can see here the outputs for PVC, PS and small formats that we supplied to our members in the wider market to help those removals. But it is an evolving picture. As new problems come to light or as technology advances, the list evolves and the work continues under the Packaging Pact. Through this, we have delivered real impact on supermarket shelves, representing the removal of millions of problematic items, and you can see some of those stats on the screen right now. But we also helped industry get ahead of regulation, prepare for bans and find solutions in advance, avoiding costly write-offs when those regulations come into force. It is more than just a list. It's about giving our members and the wider industry the tools and the evidence to drive change. And I'll take you through a couple of those things now. Over the last few years, RAP has highlighted that there is a significant opportunity to eliminate unnecessary single-use plastics and minimise household food waste. And groundbreaking new evidence on the relationship between plastic packaging and commonly wasted fruit and vegetable items. We've seen a real shift in discussions around fresh, uncut produce being sold unpackaged since RAP's initial research in 2022 for the UK market, including the UK's only voluntary pathway for increasing the amount of uncut, fresh produce sold loose, with targets created and backed by industry. Compostable packaging is often seen as an easy alternative, but in reality, it's much more conditional. It's not a default solution. We only ever really consider where packaging is food contaminated and can't be effectively recycled, and where it's likely to end up in food waste collection. Even then, reuse and recycling should always be considered first. There is also needs to be the right infrastructure in place, which is still a challenge in the UK, and clear labelling so it ends up in the right stream. So in practice, it tends to be quite specific application, things like tea bags, fruit stickers, or food caddy liners. The key point here is compostables aren't a replacement for recyclable plastics. They're a solution for very particular use cases and support the problematic and unnecessary elimination work. As I mentioned previously, the Plastics Pact is now closed and our focus is now on the UK Packaging Pact. The UK Packaging Pact has 4 goals. Goal 1 is focused on the optimisation of packaging. Goal 2 looks at the scaling of reuse and refill. Goal 3 aims to support circular infrastructure investment. And Goal 4 is focused on the harmonisation of data. Goal 1 includes targets 1, 2 and 4 of the Plastics Pact and is therefore focused on the circular economy. By designing correctly and eliminating what contaminants, we build more circular waste streams. And as our work begins under the Packaging Pact, the focus will again be on eliminating problematic items, not just plastic this time, but across the range of packaging materials and certain other items. We'll be starting with the Plastics Pact elimination list, using the same methodology to add in the next phase of items. Alongside this, we're going to develop tools such as decision trees for businesses to assess their own material uses as problematic or unnecessary to help drive change faster. Because a consensus is not always possible, and something for one business can be unnecessary for another. It might have a specific requirement without recyclable alternatives being available, so it is a business by business case. This approach will allow progress whilst alternatives are developed to enable items to be moved from investigation to elimination. And we do see through the life of the Pact, we will use the same process of continually updating our list and then monitoring progress. That concludes my slides for today. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I think you provided a very good perspective on the UK case and actually highlighted some challenges that are similar to the South African Plastics Pact. So we may be different regions, but we may also face the same challenges, and it's good to have that knowledge exchange so we can try and implement new ideas. Are there any questions for Jonathan? I don't see any raised hands or questions through the chat.
And I think that's an important point you've just made. When we look at the elimination lists around the globe by the various plastics pacts, they all have the same key items in there, such as PVC packaging, which is the one that goes across the complete plastics pact network. But we also then focus on individual items that are specific to our individual markets. And we also learn from each other as well. If another pact can put an item on the list, then maybe that's something that we should consider as well.
Thank you. Marlene, your hand is raised. You can unmute. Marlene, you can unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Jonathan, the last sentence you said about companies assessing their own material use to determine problematic or unnecessary plastics. Can you just say a bit more about that? Is that available already? Or when will it become available?
That's not available already. That's going to be one of our first work streams. But again, it is something that we will publish to the wider market as well. And it's just about, we have our investigation list, which lists items that have the potential to be problematic and unnecessary. But for one business, it might be something that they don't need because they don't need a barrier property or something else. But for another, it fulfills a specific role that can reduce food waste. And the idea is that businesses can start to look at their own product portfolios and tailor elimination and the building of the circular economy based on their own investigation rather than needing wider market consensus. It's just to help to drive this change forward.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have a chat and then we'll move on to Marie. So Leander asked how easy it is to biodegrade this compostable plastic. Does it degrade spontaneously or does it need certain conditions?
It very much depends on the individual compostable element, and this is probably one of the most confusing areas because biodegradable and the term compostable are interchangeable. The compostable element is purely the environment in which a material biodegrades. So that's very much dependent on the infrastructure in the individual country. So for us, we have a lot of our food waste goes via anaerobic digestion. This becomes a problem for a lot of compostable plastics because they generally need oxygen to enable the degradation to happen, which you don't get via this particular process. But for things like fruit labels and tea bags, we consider it a least worst option to use a compostable plastic. It might not be ideal for the infrastructure that we have, but it's better than a completely non-compostable material. So it very much depends on the individual application, the country it's being used, and even the facility. So for things like PLA, it has to meet a certain temperature for degradation to happen. So it's not home compostable, but the industrial facilities also have to meet those temperature requirements. Otherwise, the materials won't degrade. And it does take time. It is not a fast process. But there are new materials on the market that do degrade a lot faster. But the fact they degrade faster means that they can be more challenging to use because they have a shorter lifespan.
Thank you, Jonathan. It shows that compostables are not a silver bullet and there's a lot of factors that you need to consider. Marie, go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan. My question is also around the compostable plastics. So, in Europe, you mentioned that there is infrastructure to treat these post-consumer. Not all of it does get diverted accordingly, but there is a little bit of infrastructure. How do you think we should resolve this in South Africa where there isn't any infrastructure? So a lot of the time the compostable is getting mixed with recycling. As a result, it's contaminating recycling. Infrastructure probably isn't likely in the near future. Would like a ban on bioplastics or compostable plastics probably be the best outcome?
I think it depends on an individual use scenario because there are certain materials that are home compostable. There are certain materials that need to go through an industrial facility. We did quite a lot of analysis before doing our compostable plastics guidance to understand what materials could go through what waste streams, but also in what case they will be the least worst option. So I think that's always quite important. And it's a fast moving market as well. And there's lots of developments going on in this area. So I think there's not a single answer to this. It needs quite a lot of research. It doesn't necessarily need a blanket ban, but a targeted approach to where those materials are used, we tend to see as a better option. because there will always be options for them to be used. Quite often the challenge with the terms biodegradable particularly is that consumers take that on board and assume it's a means of littering. It's a mitigation of littering. It says it's biodegradable. If I leave it on the floor, it will biodegrade, whereas that's not the case. It needs specific environments normally.
Sure. Is there laws around correct labeling throughout Europe, you know, in terms of industrial compostable or industrially compostable products versus home compostable?
There are standard labels for that, yes. How much interest the consumer actually takes in those labels, I don't know. Whether they sometimes just see the word compostable, but there are standards labeling, and there's not a specific composting standard, say, for the UK market, but companies can use those industrially recognized labels. The route to regulation will be via the Green Claims Code. So for our market, if you make a green claim, you have to be able to back it up with evidence. So that would be the route to regulation, to give the consumer the right information. But there are standard labeling, such as the TUV process, which is okay to home compost or for industrial composting only.
Great, thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. We're going to continue in the vein of compostable bio-based materials. And Sadaka in the chat asks, there's many bio-based, biocompostable products in the market as an alternative to conventional plastics. At what level would this biodegradable compostable technology assist for solving the problematic plastics?
It can sometimes help. So in our market, there are strict regulations on the output from composting facilities when they're placed onto the onto things like farm fields. So they have to monitor the amount of microplastics in there. So for items that are likely to enter the composting stream, this could be a targeted approach for use those sorts of products. They're not necessarily an alternative to conventional plastics where recycling infrastructure exists. But particularly challenging areas, things like fruit labels, which are never going to enter a recycling stream, are never going to contaminate that main recycling stream. There is potential there. But again, it comes back to this sort of assessment of the market and a targeted approach. But they are, as you've mentioned, they're not a silver bullet, but they are another tool that we can bring in as we build the circular economy, but also look to minimise littering and entry into the environment.
Thank you very much. I'm just checking if there's a question in the Q&A. Shreya asks, are biodegradable and oxo-degradable the same?
Are what, sorry?
Biodegradable and oxo-degradable the same?
No. Oxo-degradables speed up the fragmentation of the plastic into smaller and smaller pieces, but don't do anything to change the polymer chain length. Whereas biodegradable materials are designed in specific environments that polymer chain length will actually shrink, so the materials will actually go back to being carbon and hydrogen. Whereas an oxo-degradable is effectively a faster route to microplastics.
Thank you for that distinction. Mary, is that a legacy hand or do you have another question? Okay, I'll take that as a legacy hand. With 5 minutes left, thank you, Jonathan, for sharing your time with us. I'm going to move on to the closing, which will be done by Ruan Snyman, the project manager for the SA Plastics Pact here at GreenCape. So Ruan holds a master's degree in philosophy from Stellenbosch University, focused on international organizations and corruption. He's an expert analyst at GreenCape and project manager for the SA Plastics Pact, with previous experience in sustainability and ESG roles at Pick n Pay and the Center for Corporate Governance in Africa. Thank you, Ruan.
Okay, thank you very much, Takunda, and thanks for that little intro as well. Yeah, so it's my pleasure to close this session, the webinar, and thanks very much for the speakers and for everybody for attending. This type of discussion that we've had, the questions and the back and forth, that's really what we try and cultivate within the SA Plastics Pact, and that's really how we try and accelerate progress towards the targets, is to learn from one another, to learn from the members, and to allow that collaboration and the discussions to happen. That will allow us to just move forward towards addressing some of these challenges that we're facing. So in terms of my closing, I'll be relatively quick. I wanted to mention, and Secunda mentioned it as well, we've recently launched the 2030 targets with Minister Okamp, and many of the SA Plastics Pact members were present as well. And it's really what we're looking to do going forward is to develop our roadmap for 2030 and really focus on the big shifts that we can allow through the SA Plastics Pact and through Plastics Reboot that can really allow us to make progress and impact by 2030. One part of that is this problematic items work that we're doing, that Secunda is leading from an SA Plastics Pact and Reboot perspective. Is going to be an action group that starts in a little while. And through the action group, we'll develop an updated list of problematic items. And that's, of course, only for SA Plastics Pact members. I know that on this call, we have non-members as well. So for all the members that are interested in taking part in that action group, you can let us know and reach out to Secunda directly. Our hope is to have a final list of problematic items by the conference at the end of the year. And of course, it's all member developed and member driven. The members will be able to vote on the items, and ultimately it will be confirmed and approved by the steering committee. But yeah, so that's just from me, just to thank everybody and thank the team for putting the webinar together. If there's any organizations interested in the SA Plastics Pact and hearing more about the work we do, and if you're interested in becoming a member, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to have those discussions. But yeah, that's all from me. Thanks everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you, Ron. And just to say, keep an eye out for future webinars that we will be running under Plastic Reboot in partnership with SA Plastics Pact. There should be more incoming in June and in July, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you for taking the time to join us, and that is the end of our webinar. Have a lovely day.